The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Casar, is recognized for 5 minutes for questioning.
Thank you. I ran for the United States Congress here in the last year, but now I'm back on the City Council. And the question for me is why? And I think the answer is pretty clear in this committee hearing. There is a strategy from the Republican majority to try to mischaracterize civil rights policy, overwhelmingly pushed by Democrats, as bad for public safety, to try to create this impossible choice between civil rights and public safety. But I humbly submit that Americans deserve both civil rights and public safety. And I know as a former council member how important that is to us who are trying to represent our constituents, that when our constituents are in trouble and call 911, that we want them to get help, and that we don't want constituents getting harmed or shot in that process by anyone, including police. But in my time in Texas, I know that I've had many constituents who've had terrible experiences, including a young teenager named David Joseph in my district, who was having the worst day of his life when 911 was called to help David, who was in mental health crisis. He was supposed to be a graduate at Premier High School. Just a few months later, when police showed up, he was shot and killed within moments, not only unarmed, but naked in the street. No one should die in mental health crisis like David. No one should be killed over a $20 bill like George Floyd, or sleeping in their home like Breonna Taylor, or unarmed and fleeing like Mike Ramos in Austin, or shackled like Joshua Wright in Hayes County, Texas, or playing video games with her nephew like Atiana Jefferson in Fort Worth, or shot by police while eating McDonald's burger like Eric Cantu in San Antonio. It's clear that our communities need and deserve both public safety and police accountability, because both of those lead to more safety to our constituents. I hope that this committee and our body does not try to nullify DC's reasonable efforts to protect Americans. So I have some questions here for the members of the DC Council. Another story in Austin was one of Breon King, who was a teacher who was allegedly speeding. She was pulled over and then shortly thereafter body slammed onto the ground. Our police chief wanted to discipline in the case, but because of things in our negotiated police contract and the fact that the incident had passed many months ago, he was not able to be disciplined until he was caught committing violence later against an innocent person. So my question to you, we tried to negotiate and change that, but weren't able to negotiate and change those terms in the contract. Do things in your policy create the opportunity for there to be more safety for people like Ms. King, so that there can be discipline in cases of police violence, and that the police contract doesn't get in the way of police chiefs using discipline when they're trying to protect safety in their community?
Thank you. I'll take that first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think at the heart of the legislation, our comprehensive reform to improve accountability and transparency is to improve public safety, improve the trust between officers and the communities in which they serve. Every chief that I can recall has also asked for the ability to have powers to be able to hold officers who break that trust, who break that faith, who create misconduct, to be able to have the ability to discipline. And that's what this legislation does. The powers that we want to give our police department to be able to hold officers accountable. We talked about the officers that had to be rehired at the tune of millions of dollars, of taxpayer dollars. Think about the morale that creates as well for the fellow officers to see that officer come back onto the force, to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in back pay, when that good officer is trying so hard to build the trust, to build the faith of community, and to serve that community. So I believe that at the heart of this legislation, we not only improve transparency and accountability, but we also are improving public safety overall.
Thank you for that.
If I could add,
yes.
So I think, this is just because it was my amendment to the bill, that the prohibition on bargaining discipline is arguably the most important provision. And it speaks to what you were saying. When there's a cop who has done something bad enough that the chief wants to fire that cop, the chief ought to be able to fire rather than being hamstrung by a union-negotiated disciplinary process, which research has shown actually works to the favor of bad cops. Raped a college student visiting D.C. area on a study abroad program. DUI accident. Termination reduced to 35-day suspension. Off-duty shooting in Maryland of individual nearest truck in the early morning hours. Termination reduced to suspension. criminally convicted of purchasing stolen property from a cooperating witness while member was also assigned to the vice unit. Termination rescinded. I mean, there's...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank, because our time is about to expire, I want to thank each of you for your work, recognizing that civil rights can be and must be public safety. Thank you.